Okay, I think we're ready to start. So welcome everybody. Welcome to this last webinar of the academic year. My name is Anne Gauthier. I'm director of the GGP, and I'm joined today by Vytenis, who is part of the GGP Hub, the infrastructure manager, and delighted to have Petra and Ivan from the Croatian team, who will be sharing with us their experience today. So just a reminder of how we will function. They will have their presentation about 25 minutes. That will be followed by questions with the audience. But one thing we would like to offer you right now is the possibility of being so-called upgraded to panelists, so that you're visible on the screen, and I think it encourages usually a bit more interaction among participants. So Vytenis is in the process right now of making that possible. You can accept or decline the invitation, meaning that you can stay as an attendee and not being visible, or you can be upgraded as a panelist. So on that note, and just a reminder that after I do the formal closing of the webinar, which will be in about 45 minutes, you're more than welcome to stay on board to chat, discuss more with our presenters today, but of course with the Central Hub also. Having said that, Petra, Ivan, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Let me just share my screen. I hope you can all see the screen.
That's great. Thank you.
Good. On behalf of the Croatian GGS team, I warmly welcome all of you for watching and listening to the presentation that Croatian team will present you today in this webinar. It's going to be me. My name is Čipin. I'm from University of Zagreb, and together with my colleagues Petra Međimurec, she will be presenting with me today, and Dario Mustač, also from the University of Zagreb, Faculty of Economics and Business. He's a national team member. He will not be presenting, but he is a very important part of the team. Well, let me say something about GGS in Croatia and the motivation. In last year, in 2022, Croatia recorded its lowest number of births since the World War II. And since the 1990, the country has been facing declining births, rapid population aging, the emigration of young individuals, and overall depopulation. And since joining the EU, Croatia has lost approximately 10% of its total population, primarily due to high immigration. You may wonder, why am I discussing this to you? I'm actually sharing this information, this basic demographic information, because these negative trends actually contributed to the implementation of GGS in Croatia. And the reason is that many public officials are concerned about the potential adverse impacts of those on future economic and social development resulting from a declining working age population due to aging and high rate of emigration among young adults. So as a result, they're seeking more than just an explanation, description of demographic trends. They are interested in explanations of various demographic phenomena. And currently in Croatia, we lack data on fertility intentions. We lack data on migration intentions, and there's also a need for a new understanding how fertility and migration decisions are influenced by different factors in different situations, different contexts, as well as the role of policies in shaping this decision, and Croatia is actually trying to implement different population demographic policy that would affect those processes. No service like the GGS in Croatia. Actually, Croatia has rarely been included in cross-comparative surveys focusing on family and fertility topics. We did not participate in multinational surveys like fertility and family and fertility surveys, population policy acceptance survey, GGS first round during the 90s and 2000s, and other international surveys such as SHARE, ESS, EVS. They are very good, but they may not be suitable to addressing the specific purposes related to family, fertility, and population change in Croatia. So let me say at the beginning that GGS plays a crucial role in capacity building and advancing demographic research in Croatia, which is relatively poor, I must say, and not many Croatian demographers actually attend international demographic conferences. And participating in GGP will provide researchers with a high quality cross-national comparative data, and especially panel data, which is crucial for targeted research and policy analysis, and it will enable us to develop especially policymakers' evidence-based policies concerning families and population changes. Let me briefly present you the timeline or our efforts to join GGP. Well, I must admit that securing funding for the GGS in Croatia was a really challenging and time-consuming process that stretched over almost a decade. You can see here on the slide that our first interest was on July 11 to 2012, actually more than almost 11 years ago. And initially, Croatian Bureau of Statistics, Croatian Science Foundation, and other potential funders declined to provide financial support for the GGS. However, situation changed in 2020. I took initiative to approach a newly formed Central State Office for Demography and Youth, and I was determined to finally secure the funding for the GGS in Croatia. Negotiation and finalizing the agreement for the implementation required almost 2 years of the persistent efforts through numerous contacts, and you can see here the timeline. It was I had to explain very detailedly, and I had to convince them about the significance of the service like GGS, and I emphasized the role was the vital role that longitudinal data plays in addressing various demographic challenges, and also after the numerous meetings, they finally agreed to fund. I must emphasize this: all 3 rounds of data collection. So I convinced them that this is a panel survey, and we need to have data panel data. We need to track same individuals through time. I must give credit to a very supportive State Secretary for Demography and Youth. She played actually a crucial role to joining GGP and securing that funding. Also, the fact that demography was a priority in the current government's program, and it was included at the National Demographic Development Strategy, that worked in our favor. And in the end, last year in March, government decided to fund GGS in Croatia. So Central State Office actually funded the data collection, while my faculty and my provided in-kind contribution through the work of national team. We did things like translation and also extensive pre-tests concerning routing, wording, country-specific question and translation accuracy, and also Central State Office for Demography managed the procurement process for the survey agency, and in the end, we started our field work last month in May. So that data, we are now approximately one month in the field work. We plan to present some first results at one event in the autumns, where we will invite, together with the Central State Office, some representatives from the countries, not only scientists, but representatives of the ministries, to share findings and insight with them, together to foster international collaboration and exchange knowledge. So you can see here that GGS in Croatia is a consortium of one government body, Central State Office for Demography and Youth, and the scientific institution, University of Zagreb, Faculty of Economics and Business. Our survey agency was Ipsos, and of course we are doing this with the central hub. Let me say briefly about our survey design. In Croatia, conducting national representative surveys online, especially push-to-web mode, was a new and innovative practice. To our surprise, three-country pilot in 2018 yielded an unexpectedly high response rate, which encouraged us to repeat this again in our main survey. Internet usage among our target population, and our target population for the GGS in Croatia was 18 to 54. Slightly, because we have shares, so we did not include all the older population, and it's very high. It's over 95% for the younger respondents. Younger than 45, it's almost universal, like 99%, or even close to 100. So this surge of internet use was amplified by the pandemic, as we all know this, and probably one drawback of online survey could be survey fatigue, and with the increasing prevalence of those online surveys, individuals may receive many invitations, and also we can have more item missing data. But different in our survey design was we didn't invite people via emails, but via postal mail. I will explain you later. So our view is that push-to-web design for data collection actually offers several advantages. It's very cost-effective compared to traditional face-to-face. Additionally, it enables methodological improvements because we can implement true simple random sampling and ensure better precision without clustering, which is challenging or almost impossible to do in face-to-face mode. For example, in Croatia, we have 556 cities and municipalities, and our sample actually include almost all of them. In face-to-face mode, we would need to cluster that and include only maybe 20% of them. And we can include now a remote area like islands and mountains region. In other survey agency always complain, why can we skip islands, because travel costs are very huge, and we usually comply with this, but right now we didn't have to comply with this, as we can cover all Croatian islands on Croatian mountains region. And the very same serving face-to-face mode would incur extreme travel expenses, making it financially unfeasible. Our sample, also I forgot to mention that dealing with sensitive question is also one of the reasons why we decided to have push to web, because in face-to-face interviews, interviewers in Croatian service agency are usually older and typically older, and this GGS actually covers younger respondents, so it may be a bit difficult to discuss topics, some sensitive topics in the survey, like sexual activity or past relationships or other sensitive topics with the older interviewers. So I think that in this mode, potentially we could get more honest and accurate answers. Our sample. Well, let me first mention that we don't have population register, and we had to use another sampling frame. It's not perfect, but still it's the only one we can use. A register of permanent temporary residence from the Ministry of the Interior. There's actually pretty significant discrepancy in total number of citizens in between the latest census that was running 2 years ago in 2021 by Croatian Bureau of Statistics and this register, but actually we have probably around 30% more citizens in this register compared to census. So we have an issue of overcoverage. We can discuss this later. I think that overcoverage is not so problematic as undercoverage, but still can be post-challenge in calculating true response rates and post-certification rate. Our gross sample consisted of 18,000 persons born between July 1968 and March 31st, 2005. We had our target of a minimum of 5,000 completed interviews. It's a sample. It's a number that is stated in our contract with the survey agency. Actually, we already surpassed this minimum, and we are our secret wish is to have close to 7,000. You can see here that to encourage participation in the survey, we initially planned to send some incentives. This is an invitation letter, and we sent those invitation letters in 3 batches of 6,000 and started May 9, lasted for 3 days. And our initial plan was to send unconditional cash incentive of 50 kuna. It's our former national currency, but we now switched to euro. We have now euro from the beginning of this year, and we had to, due to some administrative reason, we had to postpone our survey to this year. So instead, we had to send unconditional cash of €6.64. We couldn't change it, and it's probably a bit odd. But anyway, we had some restrictions imposed by Croatian Post. We couldn't send cash in envelopes via registered letters, so we had to find another solution. And another solution was to use something that is called postal money order, and it's cash delivered directly by a postman. Or if a person was not found at home, a notice was left for recipients to collect cash at the nearest post office. So that cash was sent the day after the invitation letter. Well, it is important to know that all undelivered letters sent via registered mail money orders will be returned and actually they are already returned, and they are returning to the survey agency. We had 2 reminder letters. One is already distributed. Second one will be tomorrow. The second reminder, we will start sooner for the regions in Croatia that experienced a lower response rate. We also had a appealing landing page where we could where we informed ensure that all the necessary information for respondents was provided, including also GGP promotional video with Croatian subtitles. We also had country-specific questions. We introduced many country-specific questions. You can see the full list here on the GGP web page. But we included some modules that were already used in some Nordic countries. Also one question from Freda. And also we split questions of weekend work into Saturday and Sunday, because it's a very huge topic in Croatia, work on Sundays. So could be interesting for the policy makers. Data collection is still ongoing. We plan to end the survey by the end of June. So this survey deadline is actually mentioned in our second reminder. Initial plan was July 7, but we decided to a little bit faster because during the summertime, it's not a good period to do surveys in Croatia. We are still undecided about the need to open an additional batch because of the higher than expected number of ineligible respondents. We still need to determine what to do with this, or will the Central Bureau of Statistics allow us to merge our gross sample with the census. We still don't know that. We need to have one meeting with them. Last week we launched a Facebook campaign and published promotional texts in a business newspaper, but unfortunately we had one unpleasant situation during our field work. It was a so-called negative media coverage. There was a headline in a major Croatian newspaper that was like this: a government survey disturbs citizens. Are you sterilized? It was a huge headline. And so the journalist referred to GGS question about sterilization and raised concerns about other sensitive questions, including surrogacy. Prior to the publication, I had been in contact with that journalist and explained to her that in order to gather data on low fertility, we need to collect information on those sensitive topics as well. Although the actual text was not as negative, the editor chose that headline that focused on sterilization. Fortunately, it did not affect the response rate, as you will see in the following slide. So now I will pass you over to my colleague Petra, and she will present you our very preliminary results about ongoing survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Can you hear me well? Can I just get a quick confirmation? Wonderful. Okay, let me switch to full screen mode. Hopefully it works. Okay. Okay, so we're all set. So hello, everybody. Again, I really have no time to waste because being a second speaker is difficult. If I intend to stick to our time schedule, I only have a few minutes left to present the very exciting findings about how the data collection from the first GGS Croatia ever is going. So yesterday we received the latest updates from the survey agency, and you can see this here in the slides. The latest update refers to June the 2nd, that is, if I'm not mistaken, last Friday. So by May 25th, there were over 13,000 money orders that were delivered to recipients, meaning that 4,500 money orders were not paid out. Ivan already mentioned the procedure of that was implemented if the incentive was not delivered. And by June the 2nd, over 2,000 incentives were actually returned to Ipsos. You should note, however, that it takes a while to process the letters getting back to the survey agency. So there are still some unprocessed returned letters in Split. This is where they have their office. They still need to work out the numbers so that we have the final figures. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see the reasons of why the letters returned. For example, there were 238 letters with unknown recipient. The majority of the recipients just did not pick up the shipment. Some refused to pick up, some moved, and some of them died. This here refers to the invitation letters, and on the right-hand side, you can see the numbers referring to the postal money orders. Currently, the second reminders are in print, and I will show you in the next 2 slides. Adriatic Croatia is the priority because of its lowest response rate in comparison to other regions in Croatia. So let's get to the more interesting part. Here you can see how the data collection was actually going. So there on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the number of respondents who agreed to proceed after the introduction of the survey, compared to whether or not they completed the last unfiltered question in the survey. So if you remember, Ivan mentioned that the invitation letter starting to go out on May 10th. So we here have first surveys on May 10th, and the number rose before the weekend. So this is Friday, declined somewhat during the weekend, and on Monday and Tuesday, beginning on May 15th, we had the largest number of incoming surveys. So this then again dropped, and here you can see the effect of the first reminder. On the right-hand side, this is just shown in terms of the cumulative response rate. That is, for now, I just divided the numbers with the gross sample size, that is the 18,000. So this shaded area refers to the days that the data, that the letters started to go out. And you can see the highest rise in the response rate in the week beginning with May 15th. For example, on that Monday, the response rate was like 6%. And by Friday that week, that is May 19th, it rose to 14.5%. And the increase kind of slowed down, but went up again as the result of our first reminder that that was on 25th and 26th of May. So based on the data export for June the 2nd, we reached 24% of completed surveys, that is surveys in which the last unfiltered question is answered. This rises to almost 28% if you consider all the surveys in which the respondents agreed to proceed after the introduction. This response rate, however, varies largely across Croatian regions. So the NUTS 3 level is shown on this map here. So this is Croatia. The bluer the color, the higher the response rate. The redder the color, the lower the response rate. So the percent of gross sample that completed the last unfiltered question in the survey ranges from 16% in the Šibenik-Knin County to 30% in the Osijek-Baranja County. So here you can see quite nicely that in Adriatic Croatia, we have mostly reddish counties, while in other regions, the response rate is quite higher. And on the right-hand side of the screen, If you look at the table showing the numbers by NUTS level 2 regions, you can see actually that the Adriatic Croatia kind of lags behind, and that the response rate is higher, the highest in northern Croatia. As for variation in the response rate by age, sex, and some other population characteristics, here I put together a table comparing our sample size, the net sample size as of June the 2nd, that is last Friday, and I compare this to the distribution of a gross sample. Here you can see the response rate, and here you can see in the last column of the table the comparison to the latest population census. But let me first very briefly go over what the net sample is, so that you can understand everything that I will show in the following slides very briefly as well. So the total number of IDs in the export we received was a bit over 5,000, and of those, a little bit less than 5,000 were actually valid IDs, those that were also present in our gross sample. Of those, some respondents were lost for not agreeing to proceed after the introduction, and you can see in order how many of the respondents completed the DEM module alone, then this module combined with the life history module and the first 3 modules together, and compare that to the numbers of respondents who came to the end of the survey or completed the last unfiltered question. So this here, valid IDs, is shaded differently because the sums, the ends shown in these columns, come to this number, so 4,984. Here I present the distributions of non-missing cases, and in terms of age, you can see the distribution of our sample in comparison to the distribution of the gross sample. So we have slightly a slight overrepresentation of the youngest age group and of the older age group. This corresponds to the response rates, which are highest among persons below 30 years of age. Of course, expectedly, we also have an over-representation of women by some extent, and unfortunately, I cannot actually comment on how the distribution of the educational categories and the marital categories corresponds to other sources. As for the census, these data are not yet available, but we expect them shortly, hopefully by the end of June. I did make some comparisons to the labor force survey in Croatia, but this is an extra slide because I want to really move forward and present everything I had in mind. So this is our net export that we had to work with, to experiment with, and we were really excited because we wanted to see how this can be used to address some of the issues even mentioned that motivated actually the implementation of the GGS in Croatia. So I have very few, 4 to be exact, final slides that will actually lead you through 2 examples of what we did to analyze the data very briefly. So we were interested in learning more about fertility intentions in Croatia. So here you can see that we had a little less than 4,000 respondents answering to 2 questions about fertility intentions. The first one being, do you intend to have another child during the next 3 years? And the majority of our respondents had said no, definitely no, 40%, or probably no. And then the respondents were asked whether they intend to have any more children at all, supposing they didn't have another child during the next 3 years. So the shading of the bars, whose width is actually proportional to these percentages shown below. So the shading represents answers and the distribution of intending to have any more children at all. So we see there's something going on here, that there appears to be an association. And for example, we can see that many said they didn't intend to have another child during the next 3 years, or actually ever. Like 3/4 said never. So these may be, for example, people who decided that they have already had enough children, or maybe young people who don't have children and do not intend to have any children at all. Actually, I did a check, and there were 175 people who had no children at all, and decided and intended no children at all in the future either. Interestingly, those people had personal ideals of family size of over 1 child on average, and over 2 children in terms of general preferences. So here I compared fertility intentions and family size ideals across groups of respondents with different numbers of children. Okay, so we used several variables to construct this plot. You can see on the right, on the bottom of the slide on the right, that I have to make a disclaimer. You can immediately notice the number of responses this actually refers to is quite lower. This is because there were many responses of not knowing how many children actually people intended to have. So here, after the question you saw on the previous slide, respondents were asked how many children they actually intend to have. Okay, and this question was not asked to respondents who said they definitely didn't intend any children. So for those respondents, I added the number of children they already have, the total number of children, to learn about their total intended family size. And for others, I just summed the intended number of additional children to the existing number of total children. So here you can see the total intended family size in comparison to personal ideals and general ideals about the number of children. So for respondents with no children, there is a clear upward going gradient. This also holds for respondents with 1 child, but things seems to change among the respondents with 3 or 4 or more children. And this is the gradient for all respondents that answered all those questions. Finally, our second motivation was to understand the desires and intentions to move. And on the left-hand side, you can see how the percentages of respondents intended to move within Croatia, okay, corresponds to the respondents who intend to move abroad. So definitely no appeared in like 2/3 of the cases when referring to moving within Croatia. And it rose to almost 80% when referring to those intending to move abroad. So who is more likely to intend to move abroad to another country within the next 3 years? There's often talk here in Croatia that it's the most highly educated. So I tested this assumption and estimated an ordered logistic regression model to see how the predicted probabilities of each answer category change by educational attainment. The model actually controls for several other variables. And you should note that the answer categories are not in order here, but are rather presented as such, so that definitely not is above definitely yes. So you can see that the probability of saying that you do not intend to move to another country definitely actually declines with education, whereas the probability of expressing a definite positive intention to move rises with education. You should also note that the y-axis shown in this subplot are not equidistant. Remember, we had a relatively little proportion of people expressing definite or probable positive intentions to emigrate from Croatia. So hopefully I managed to present some of the possibilities of using this data to address some really interesting research questions. Of course, my findings come with a big disclaimer. I only received the data export very recently, so we need to dig deeper to provide more substantial claims. Of course, this is only a limited export because the data collection is still ongoing. And based on the update as of yesterday, we surpassed 5,500 surveys in which respondents agreed to proceed after the introduction. And 4,800 surveys were complete with less unfiltered questions answered. In terms of the further steps, Ivan and I are hoping to prepare a technical paper describing all this information we presented in brief in more detail. And hopefully data will become available by the end of the year or maybe the beginning of next. So now we are very curious to hear your questions, comments, and suggestions. I sincerely apologize for taking up more time than intended, and I hope you enjoyed what we had to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was really informative and, in a sense, so exciting that you even managed to present some results even while the data is still being collected at the moment. I can imagine it was a lot of work in very recent weeks. So thank you so much. But let me indeed turn to the audience. So remember, you can use the raise your hand. We can upgrade you as panelists if you want to ask your question live, or you can put it in the Q&A. Who would like to break the ice and ask the first question? So there's a question by Laurent Toulemont. Laurent, you can unmute yourself. It's all yours.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much for this fascinating presentation. And thank you for having already preliminary results when the fieldwork is still ongoing. So I had a question about the regional variations in the response rate, whether they are common in many surveys or whether they are specific to the to this survey or to this data collection mode. Because I saw huge variation like that. So I was wondering whether there was any kind of explanation for that. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, I can. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Laurent, for this question. Actually, this is very common in other surveys. We have this in SHARE and ESS in other surveys as well. That respondents in those Adriatic parts of Croatia are reluctant to participate in the service. I don't know the real reasons for that. Maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe, I don't know, it's the same situation in other countries that have you know, some regions that are because this region in Croatia is richer than those parts in the northern Croatia, and you know, I don't know, for example, people in Dubrovnik area or around Split, how much time do they have for the participation in the survey, or maybe they think it's some sort of you know, government tax investigation if they're hiding something, because those people have many apartments, they rent them during the summer period, and it could be many reasons. Yeah, but it's something that was noticed already.
Thank you. Petra, can you stop sharing the screen so that we can see each other better? Thank you. Okay, thank you for the question, Laurent. Who would like to ask the next question? There's one from the attendee. Let's see, it's Atli Pruar. So, Vitenis, can you upgrade up? Yes, Atli, you have to manually
unmute you and
Oh, yeah, exactly.
all right.
Here you are.
Well, thank you very much, Ivan and Petra, for a very exciting presentation. Well, you told us that at the moment the response rate is approximately 25%, but of course there are there's a lot of over coverage. So taking that into account, that there's going to be a second reminder, you're probably going to end up over 40%, which is huge for web surveys. So I want to know, what's your secret?
Well, thank you for this question. We had a similar response rate in our pilot in 2018, so we expected something similar, but a little bit less than that number. I think our response rate were like 45. I think you wrote some papers together with Tom and Susanna and others about this. So probably from my point of view, it's a combination of unconditional incentive, and that incentive was not well. It's a bit strange because it was not delivered usually at the same time with the invitation letter. It was delivered as a cash, usually after it, because we sent that cash day after the registered mail, so they should already know what was going on. We also had an invitation letter that Ministry of Interior is giving us contact information. So it could be a reason because it's a credible source. As some people are definitely they are afraid of abusing those information. I also got some few questions from my colleagues and friends who jumped into that sample. Is this some sort of scam or fraud? Are you really? Are really? Is this you, or someone is using your name? So actually, I had to had to explain that. And we also had 3 people signed in the invitation letter: the director of the survey agency, state secretary, and myself as a lead national team leader of GGP in Croatia. So I think it's a combination of many different things. And also we don't have, I mentioned that during my presentation, we don't have many surveys like that. Ipsos survey agency never did anything similar. Except the pilot in 2018. So they do online surveys, but not with the postal invitation. They did with the email invitations, and the response rates are much lower with the email invitation than with the postal invitation with that push-to-web design. So I think that it contributed to this higher than average response rate, definitely.
Interesting. I think Almut, you were the next one in line to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, thank you, Ivan and Petra, for your nice presentation. It was very interesting and exciting to see what's going on in Croatia. Just one point regarding the last question from Art. Maybe one explanation might also be that Croatia in general, as Ivan said, is maybe a bit of under-surveyed, because you said you have no other surveys in Croatia, like FFS, or no data available. And maybe this is also a reason in comparison to countries like Germany or also the Netherlands, which is a very over-surveyed countries, because we have a lot of surveys. And I could imagine that people are very kind of annoyed or suspective against surveys or get surveyed, or that might be also another explanation. And my question would be, maybe I missed this information, then I'm sorry, because I have a bit of networks problems here. you said you applied a push to web design. That means you have also face-to-face cases, or are the sample you now presented with was it only online cases, or are the face-to-face cases also included in the analysis you presented?
I think so. No, it's totally 100% web survey. So it's pushed to web via postal mail.
Okay. So you do not have a face-to-face?
No.
Okay.
No.
Then I missed this information. I thought it was the same design as in the GGP 3-country pilot, but it wasn't then.
No, because we decided not to use it due to a lower response rate in the face-to-face pilot in Croatia than in the web pushed web design. So that was the main reason. Also funding, and because it would be much more expensive. Ipsos calculated 3 times more expensive, not this design, but cluster design. So I think that this design would be like cost $1 million. I don't know how much.
But therefore you have reached a very good response rate also in web. So congratulations for that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Laurent, is that a new hand or an old hand?
Yeah, it's a new one, but Ivan already almost answered my question. I was wondering whether you were intending to send reminders by mail. So you said that sending invitation letters was much more efficient than sending mails, but maybe it could be useful also to send some reminders by mail if you have the email address of the people from your register from the ministry. So I was wondering whether you intend to do that, because it can be very cheap to do that as a final reminder. Thank you.
Yeah, we would like to do that, but unfortunately we don't have emails in our sampling frame. So we can only rely on sending postal mails and nothing else. Maybe we could try to find out phone numbers, but it's not totally legal thing, because we need to merge our names with the phone numbers. So I think we will not opt for this. We will leave it as it is, only 100% web survey with the data that we have, because people would then ask, how come that you have my phone number, etc. So that could jeopardize, survey. We don't want that.
Thank you for this. Any last question from the audience to our participants? No, if not aware of the time, I'll formally close the webinar by first, thank you so much, Ivan. Oh, sorry, there was one question from Letizia that I missed. So Letizia, it's your chance to ask the last question.
Hi, all very interesting, especially for those who need to organize in other country, also neighbors. I really appreciate the details you explain. I was just very curious about this last thing you said about the rate of response of face-to-face in the pilot, that it was lower than on web survey, because sometimes I mean, my experience on what happened now in the pilots in Italy and other surveys is the contrary. So how did you contact for face-to-face? In the same way, always with written letters, or there were other way to contact people?
Yeah, it was the same way, always with a written letter, and then the interviewer actually went to the address. But because it's a working age population, they often didn't find people at home. So maybe that was one of the reasons why they had a lower response rate, and people already declined to participate via face-to-face, saying we will fill out the survey via web. So okay. Please, yeah.
So you gave this possibility.
Yes, we did.
Nice idea. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Good. So on that, a big thank you to our speakers, Petra and Ivan. Again, I appreciate all the effort, all the work that has gone. Good luck with the last phase of the data collection. And to the audience, thank you very much for attending this webinar. We will stay open just a few minutes if you have any additional question to the Central Hub or to our speakers. On that, thank you, colleagues. Bye.